And the reason why I've been asked to do this today is because we're a subject that's actually always had the exams at the end of year 11. And so we're really content-based as well. We've got a lot of information that students have got to remember at the end of that time. So we've actually been trying over the time that I've been here to come up with techniques and ways that will help students remember a lot of the information they need when they go into an exam. And this specifically is about image association. So as you can see, we've got a picture here of the great Roy Walker doing catchphrase. And I don't know if you remember, but he always used to say, those of you who do remember, will remember that he always used to tell people to just say what you see. And that's what we're going to do, because this is how we introduce it to the students, how we're going to be using images. So if anybody can tell me what they can see right away. I think some of you probably recognise I teach history and already probably left on the idea that it was going to be something historical. Hippocrates is in fact how you spell Hippocrates as well, so it's got a literacy aspect to it as well. So we always call it Hippocrates when we talk to the students as well, so that's not how you pronounce it. But the thing is, you've got to know quite a lot about Hippocrates, and so this is a statue of what it might look like, because no one's quite clear as to who the individual was. But there's 5 actual things that we focused on that are all to do with his attitude towards medicine, because we teach medicine 3 times. So each one of these things is something they've got to remember. You can see this is only one tiny aspect of the development of medicine from prehistoric times to modern day. So there's 5 things to remember about Hippocrates or Hippocrates. So what actually are they? How are we going to get the students to remember those? So this is another image that we use. In fact, we can see Hippocrates, or the Hippocrates there. Can anybody see anything else that might be happening in the picture that you'd like to volunteer? Okay, so we've got the things around the outside which represent certain things. Can anybody tell what's going on in the actual picture? Yeah, you did.
I was about to say, is it wind, wound, walking, water? Is it the 5 W's?
Oh, not the 5 W's, no.
The 4 humours.
Ah, right, it is the 4 humours, so people might know about the 4 humours. There's certainly, the whole thing is that Aristotle himself managed to link the idea that there's got to be a balance in life in general, and he saw a balance in the way that the year worked, the 4 seasons, and those symbols are like weather symbols that represent that. The actual, what the hippo is doing, and someone said bleeding, and that was correct, that's one of the things that the hippo is doing, also relates to the theme of the 4 humours. So the idea was to come up with a fun image, which the kids might be able to remember in the future. I'm surprised nobody spotted that was what the hippo was doing. And the bleeding one we got, and perhaps people too polite to not understand advance, it's also purging. At the same time. So this is, it can be a lot of fun going through this kind of imagery, and I have to say that this definitely works, and I can tell you why it works, because I had this drawing on the board for when students come in once, a few years ago, and a student in my PD group, or if we had tutors then, I can't remember now, it was a few years ago, and I was in year 10 at the moment, and he came into the class and saw that image on the board without any of the explanation, and he asked me to tell him why it was on there. So I went through it with him, and he doesn't do history. So the other day, this year, it was on the board again, and I'd never spoken to him about it since. And he walked in and went, that's the theory of the 4 humours, and explained it all to me thoroughly after that one run-through by me. So the bottom line is that this kind of image association, if you can come up with an image that links to knowledge, you can get students to remember that, and a ridiculous image like this works perfectly, then in fact that's how you can remember things more easily. And if ever you've seen like magicians, like people like Derek Brown and people like that doing memory tricks, it's actually image association they use is one of the deep skills so that they can actually remember things like that. So it definitely works, there's no doubt about it. So what we do then is we get the students to play with this idea. We actually get them to come up with their own image associations based around one of the ideas that we saw earlier, Hippocrates. Now what can we see in this picture? Right, good. No, it really is a teapot. But we don't talk about it as a teapot because we imagine, say, if Hippocrates was having a cup of tea, he might not have a teapot, but from a depot. Because one of the ideas is clinical observation. Clinical observation, which was one of the 5 things they've got to remember, there's 4 things that are involved in it. Clinical observation, it's got, and each one begins with the letter B, or P, or and T. So in fact, that's an acronym. Another thing we could go on about. We do use acronyms quite a lot. It's another memory aid. So we said to the students, right, these are the 4 words, which they know. Come up with images so that you'll remember each of these 4 words. So I'm going to show you the images now that they came up with, and see if you can tell me what the word is from Depop. Remember, each one begins with, the first one's beginning with a D. So it's just like what we started out with. Can you say what you see? What do you think it is? Right, that was easy. Diagnosis. Yeah, and this is the actual drawing that somebody did actually do themselves. It's a genuine student one, which I thought was a stroke of genius, to be honest. Diagnosis. This one's actually quite difficult. It begins with P, and unless you know the theory of the 4 Qs, I think everyone struggles to do this. It's to do with gathering information, or looking back at previous information that you've already stored. But I don't expect anyone to get this one, so I'm just going to reveal it. We could have had another one with lots of notices on it, but we thought that'd be repetitious. So it's simply the idea of looking back, the prognosis, where you look at the information that you've already got and say, well, I think this might be wrong with you. Observe, yes, clearly we've got like the idea of imaging, looking at things, sorry, I beg your pardon. Observation, this is somebody else's drawing, so you're going to like. And this is one as well, I quite like this one particularly. It begins with T. Treatment, because of course you've got treat, T, men, T. Another one is treatment, of course, where we've got a tree. The idea of a tree is you can't really get away from, and then somebody actually being treated with a plaster, somebody doing that picture. So, Hippocrates, again, this might be him. He's got less hair this time, but people have decided that might be another statue of Hippocrates. But this idea of clinical observation, prognosis, diagnosis, treatment, that is what makes him the father of medicine, and not the theory of the 4 Qs, which is also really famous for. So, with using these kinds of images, and especially getting the students to play with the images themselves that they've come up with, it can be a really powerful tool. And as it makes him the father of medicine, because doctors still use clinical observation today, as you can see in these 2 images. So in the end, the idea of Depop, because it's an acronym, does work for a non-visual learner as well. But the whole idea of particularly for visual learners, image association, is very effective.